Hey everyone, ready to dive deep into the world of 28 Years Later? Released on March 20th, 2025, this film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. On March 20th, 2025, 28 Years Later was released in theaters, and in that single moment, it became something more than just another post-apocalyptic film. It became an event. As the latest entry in the 28 Days Later franchise, this film builds on its predecessors but also redefines what it means to live in a world ravaged by a virus. It's not just the brutal aftermath we're familiar with. It's the future that's never been explored until now. What makes 28 Years Later extraordinary isn't just its apocalyptic setting or its haunting imagery. It's how it breathes new life into a genre that many thought had reached its peak. The film takes everything that made its predecessors iconic and pushes it into a world that feels both eerily familiar and profoundly unsettling. This isn't a story that relies on jump scares or gore. Instead, it relies on atmosphere, psychological tension, and a profound exploration of what it means to survive when the world has already ended. It's a story about the choices we make when we've already lost everything, and the horrors that lie within humanity itself. The plot of 28 Years Later follows Claire, a survivor in a world that's been left in ruin by the rage virus. The virus, once a seemingly unstoppable force that reduced humanity to mindless, infected husks, has evolved over the years. It's no longer just a viral plague but something far more insidious, a catalyst for societal transformation. As we follow Claire through the wreckage of a world long since abandoned by civilization, we're thrust into a story of survival, human connection, and a chilling battle for the future. What sets Claire apart from the many survivors before her is her search for hope, not just survival. For Claire, every step forward is a step toward a new world. A world where humanity can rebuild itself, if only it can learn from the mistakes of the past. Along her journey, Claire encounters others who have lived through the devastation in vastly different ways. There's Dominic, a former military man turned cynical loner, hardened by years of fighting and distrustful of anyone not willing to fight for their life. His vision of survival is brutal, no holds barred, and deeply distrustful of human compassion. Then, there's Ava, a brilliant scientist who believes she may have discovered the cure to finally eliminate the virus. Her work has the potential to eradicate the plague once and for all, but it comes with its own set of moral dilemmas. The film's narrative doesn't shy away from questioning whether a cure is truly the best solution, or if there's something to be learned from living in a world where the infected have evolved into something more sophisticated than we ever imagined. This complex interplay between characters and their motivations is one of the film's defining strengths. Each character's journey is not just a survival tale. It's an exploration of the human condition in the face of absolute devastation. Their internal conflicts, desires, and fears are as dangerous as the external threats they face. And it's these emotional struggles that drive the story forward. When Claire, Dominic, and Ava come into contact with the resurgence, a faction of survivors who believe the infected are the next stage of human evolution, the film takes a profound philosophical turn. Are the infected really something to be eradicated? Or are they merely misunderstood creatures, part of the natural order, evolving in ways that humanity once did? This question lingers throughout the film, forcing viewers to confront their own beliefs about the future of mankind. It's this existential questioning, combined with heart-pounding moments of action and horror, that gives 28 Years Later its unforgettable impact. The film is a layered experience, one that doesn't just aim to entertain but to provoke thought, to challenge its audience to question the very essence of survival and humanity. Visually, 28 Years Later is a masterpiece. The cinematography, under the expert direction of Richard Haskins, brings the world of the infected to life with haunting beauty. The ruined cities, overrun by nature, feel like abandoned dreamscapes, filled with eerie quietness that speaks volumes. Every frame is meticulously crafted to evoke a sense of isolation and dread, but there's also an underlying beauty to this destroyed world. The visuals mirror the themes of the film: decay and renewal, destruction and the possibility of rebuilding. It's a world that's falling apart, yes, but it's also a world that's fighting to rise again. And that contradiction is what makes the imagery so powerful. The infected themselves are another key visual element of the film. No longer the mindless, feral creatures of 28 Days Later, they have become something else, something more dangerous. They're no longer just zombies. They've evolved into a new kind of predator, one that is capable of strategy, cooperation, and even advanced cunning. Their chilling intelligence is a constant threat to the survivors, and the film builds suspense by showcasing how they've adapted to their environment, waiting for the right moment to strike. But it's not just the visual style or the narrative that has made 28 Years Later a cultural phenomenon. It's the way the film taps into contemporary fears and anxieties. The world of 28 Years Later feels painfully relevant. While the film takes place in a post-apocalyptic future, the themes it explores, survival, moral ambiguity, the ethics of scientific progress, and the possibility of renewal after devastation, resonate deeply with today's world. It's a reflection of the fragility of civilization and a reminder that even when everything seems lost, humanity's will to survive, adapt, and rebuild is never truly extinguished. It's a film that speaks to our collective fears and hopes, making it not just a cinematic experience, but a reflection of the times in which we live. 28 Years Later has become a cultural touchstone because it challenges the audience to think about the world in a new way. It's a film that doesn't just entertain. It engages, it challenges, and it forces its viewers to confront their own humanity. It's a gripping, thought-provoking journey that asks what we're willing to sacrifice to rebuild, and whether the future is something to be embraced or feared. In a world that feels increasingly uncertain, 28 Years Later taps into our collective anxieties about the state of the world and provides both a warning and a glimmer of hope. It's a film that will stay with you long after the credits roll, making you think about what it really means to survive in a world that's been irrevocably changed. If you haven't yet experienced 28 Years Later, now is the time. There's a lot more lurking beneath the surface of this film than meets the eye, and it's worth diving into every corner to uncover its many layers. This isn't just a movie. It's a reflection of the world we live in, a powerful story about humanity, and a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the fight for survival can lead to unexpected hope. The first half of 28 Years Later sets the stage for an unforgettable journey through a world scarred by the ravages of the rage virus. The film opens with the haunting, empty streets of London, now a city swallowed by nature's relentless reclaiming of the land. As the camera glides through overgrown buildings and deserted thoroughfares, it's clear that this is a world that time has moved on from. The air is heavy with silence, punctuated only by the occasional rustle of wind sweeping through the abandoned metropolis. There's a lingering sense of something lost, something broken, and we, the audience, are stepping into a story that will attempt to rebuild what was shattered piece by piece. We're introduced to Claire, played by Lily Tran, a woman who's spent the last several years surviving on her own in this desolate world. Her past is a mystery at first, but as the narrative unfolds, it becomes clear that she's seen things that no one should ever have to see. Her eyes hold a weary depth, a sadness that's earned through years of loss. Yet there's something undeniably resilient about her. She's not just trying to survive, she's searching for something more. There's a sense of purpose in her steps, as though she's driven by a singular need, to find hope where there seems to be none. The opening sequence is pivotal in establishing the stakes and the rules of the world. Claire isn't just facing the infected. She's facing a world that has learned to adapt. The rage virus, once a savage and chaotic force, has mutated over time, leading to an entirely new breed of infected. They no longer stumble mindlessly through the streets, driven solely by hunger. No, these infected are intelligent. They can strategize, work in groups, and hunt with the precision of apex predators. Claire has learned to move silently, always on alert, always ready to defend herself, knowing that any misstep could be her last. The first moment of suspense comes when Claire barely avoids a group of infected who seem to be hunting with a deliberate, coordinated intent. This subtle shift sets the tone for the entire movie. The infected are no longer the mindless terror they once were. They've become something far more dangerous. The first pivotal moment occurs when Claire stumbles upon a small, hidden enclave of survivors. It's a place that feels almost too good to be true, a rare oasis in a world that has forgotten what it means to be safe. Here, she meets Dominic, David Rojas, a former soldier who has become hardened by years of conflict. His cold, cynical exterior is a stark contrast to Claire's more hopeful and idealistic demeanor. He's a man who's lived through endless battles, both physical and emotional, and it shows in the guarded way he interacts with everyone. He doesn't believe in hope anymore. To him, survival is all that matters, and anything that gets in the way of that is expendable. Claire, however, sees in him something she desperately needs, a semblance of connection. In this fractured world, it's easy to forget what it means to trust someone else. But there's something about Dominic that intrigues her. She doesn't fully trust him, yet she knows that the path forward is uncertain, and she can't do it alone. This early friction between them is palpable, setting up an evolving relationship that will be crucial to the emotional arc of the story. Their early exchanges are fraught with tension, as Claire attempts to balance her optimism with Dominic's hardened pragmatism. But as they begin to learn from each other, we see that there's more to both of them than meets the eye. Dominic's internal struggle is revealed in subtle moments. A flashback, triggered by a chance encounter with an old military radio, reveals that he once led a group of soldiers who were sent on a mission to contain the infected, only to find that the virus had already spread too far. The mission ended in disaster, and Dominic was the sole survivor. The guilt weighs heavily on him, shaping his belief that the only way to survive in this world is to remain detached and ruthless. His interactions with Claire become a slow burn, a dynamic where the cracks in his armor begin to show, but not without resistance. His inner conflict foreshadows a potential change in perspective, though it's unclear when or how it will unfold. The tension between these two characters builds to a fever pitch when they encounter Ava, Maria Lou, a scientist who has dedicated her life to studying the virus in the hopes of finding a cure. Ava's presence introduces a new layer to the story. She's not just another survivor. She's someone who believes in a future beyond mere survival. She sees the virus as a problem to be solved, a challenge to overcome, rather than something to be feared or accepted. This belief places her at odds with Dominic, who views the infected as an unchangeable part of the world's new order, and Claire, who believes that humanity can rebuild itself if it chooses to. Ava's appearance in the story marks a significant turning point. She introduces Claire and Dominic to the concept of the resurgence, a faction of survivors who believe the infected represent the next stage of human evolution. They've embraced the virus, seeing it as a way for humanity to shed its weaknesses and become stronger. This ideology seems far-fetched to Claire and Dominic at first, but Ava's research suggests there may be some truth to it. The infected, as it turns out, are evolving in ways that humanity hasn't. They're developing intelligence, strategy, and cooperation, traits that were never part of the original virus's design. This revelation challenges everything Claire and Dominic thought they knew about the world and forces them to question their own perceptions of survival and morality. The discovery of the resurgence becomes a game-changer. At first, Claire is fascinated by the idea of a cure, something that could truly eradicate the virus and restore the world to its former glory. Ava's research suggests it's possible, but the journey to finding the cure is fraught with dangers. Dominic, on the other hand, is deeply skeptical of Ava's optimism. To him, the resurgence represents a dangerous idealism that could get them killed. He sees their philosophy as naive and reckless, a product of people who are too far removed from the brutal realities of survival. The tension between these competing ideologies adds a rich layer to the narrative, creating an emotional battleground where hope and despair collide. The characters' differing views on the virus and its evolution drive the plot forward, setting the stage for the moral dilemmas that will shape the rest of the film. One of the most suspenseful moments comes when Claire, Dominic, and Ava are forced to leave their temporary safe haven and venture into the wilderness in search of a key piece of information that could lead them to the cure. The journey is treacherous, fraught with constant danger as the infected are always lurking, watching, and waiting. The eerie calm of the world they're navigating only heightens the tension. Every step they take feels like a step closer to something greater, but also to something far more sinister. The infected have begun to adapt in ways they never imagined, and the threat they pose has evolved beyond what they can comprehend. The film's first half culminates in a shocking, heart-pounding sequence where the trio is ambushed by a group of infected who have learned to work together in a way that defies their previous understanding. The group is separated in the chaos, and Claire finds herself trapped in a dilapidated building, surrounded by infected that are eerily coordinated in their attacks. The suspense builds to a fever pitch as she fights not just for her life but for her very belief in the future she's been hoping for. This sequence is a masterclass in tension building, with the camera closing in on Claire's face, her breaths shallow and panicked, as she desperately searches for a way out. But it's the twist that follows that truly sets the stage for the rest of the film. In the heat of the battle, Claire makes a desperate decision to trigger a series of explosive devices, creating a massive distraction that allows her to escape, but not without cost. As she stumbles into the daylight, battered and bloodied, she's confronted by an unexpected truth. The resurgence is not what it seems. The infected, it turns out, may not be the only threat in this new world. There are darker forces at play, and the future Claire has been hoping for may be nothing more than a mirage. This first half of 28 years later is a masterful setup, carefully laying the groundwork for the twists and turns to come. Every character is haunted by their own past, each driven by personal demons that make their journey more than just a fight for survival. It's a search for redemption, understanding, and the truth about what the future might hold. The stakes have been set, and the narrative has only just begun to reveal the darkness that lies ahead. As Claire, Dominic, and Ava continue their journey, it's clear that they'll be forced to confront not just the infected, but their own deepest fears. What began as a desperate attempt to survive is about to spiral into a far more complex and dangerous struggle for the future of humanity itself. In the second half of 28 years later, the tension escalates, and the narrative takes unexpected, thrilling turns. What begins as a journey of survival transforms into a desperate race for redemption, revealing both the deepest desires and darkest secrets of its characters. As Claire, Dominic, and Ava venture further into the world ravaged by the mutated rage virus, the lines between hope and despair blur, leading them into unimaginable confrontations. We pick up with Claire, Dominic, and Ava reeling from the ambush they narrowly survived. They've managed to escape the infected, but not without cost. Their temporary refuge in a makeshift camp is disrupted when Claire, still processing the gravity of their situation, learns that the resurgence is not just a group of idealists fighting for a cure. It is, in fact, a faction deeply tied to the evolution of the virus itself. At this moment, the stakes of their mission are no longer just about survival. They are about understanding the terrifying nature of the virus that has ravaged the world. With this realization, Claire begins to see her mission in a new light. This isn't just about hope anymore. It's about understanding what's happening to humanity and whether the infected are truly the enemy, or if there is something much darker at play. The group's journey leads them toward a remote research facility that Ava believes holds critical information for developing a cure. The facility, buried deep within the forest and isolated from the rest of the world, is a former government research lab, now overrun with infected. As they draw closer, the tension between the characters reaches a boiling point. Dominic, ever the realist, is skeptical about finding any hope in this facility. He believes that the infected are beyond saving, and that the real threat now is the human factions that have grown power-hungry, using the infected as a tool for their own agendas. Meanwhile, Ava's blind optimism pushes the group forward, even as the odds of survival grow slimmer with each passing mile. The moments of quiet along the journey are becoming increasingly rare. The landscape is more treacherous, the infected more cunning, and each passing day chips away at the group's resolve. As the film moves into its second half, the infected are no longer just animals driven by hunger. They have begun to exhibit signs of collective intelligence. They don't just attack in waves. They ambush strategically, setting traps and coordinating their movements. The group's path is perilous, and every misstep could lead to disaster. One particularly chilling moment occurs when the trio is forced to cross a ravine and is suddenly ambushed by a group of infected that seem to have laid out an intricate trap. Dominic's military training comes into play as he takes the lead in navigating them through the perilous terrain. This encounter solidifies the idea that these creatures are not just mindless killers but something far more dangerous. The research facility, when they finally reach it, is a sprawling complex surrounded by overgrown foliage. Its exterior is cracked and weathered, showing the passage of time and the toll it has taken since the outbreak. The tension here is palpable. The group sneaks inside, avoiding the infected that now patrol the area with unnatural precision. The visuals here are stunning: long, dark corridors that seem to stretch endlessly, with the occasional flicker of malfunctioning lights casting eerie shadows. Every creaking door, every distant noise sets the audience on edge, as if danger is waiting just around the corner. Inside the facility, the group uncovers startling revelations. Ava's research leads them to a room filled with old lab notes, and through them, a horrifying discovery is made. The virus didn't just mutate by chance. It was deliberately altered, engineered by a covert government project aimed at creating the perfect weapon. But something went wrong. The virus became uncontrollable, and it began to mutate beyond their control, evolving into a strain that could spread faster and become more lethal. The twist is staggering. The Rage virus wasn't just an accident. It was a man-made disaster that became humanity's greatest weapon and its greatest enemy. This revelation sends shockwaves through the group. Ava is horrified by the implications of her findings. She had always believed that the virus was just a mutation of nature, something that could be cured. But the truth is far darker. The virus, in its evolved form, has the potential to change the world permanently, not just by turning people into mindless monsters, but by reshaping the very nature of human existence. Claire, once driven by the hope of finding a cure, is now faced with the grim reality that the virus may not be something that can ever be undone. Instead, it might be part of a larger, irreversible shift in human evolution. Dominic, always the skeptic, now sees that the true enemy might not just be the infected, but the corrupted power structures that created this catastrophe in the first place. His growing distrust of Ava begins to bubble to the surface. Her optimism is now a dangerous blind spot, one that he cannot afford to ignore. The emotional conflict between the characters intensifies as they make their way deeper into the facility. Claire, still holding on to the idea of a cure, is torn between her desire to fix the past and the realization that what they're up against might be beyond repair. Dominic, now fully convinced that survival is the only way forward, urges them to leave the facility before they risk being overtaken by the infected. Ava, however, insists that they need to finish what they started, believing that they can still make a difference. This ideological divide reaches a boiling point when the facility's security systems are triggered, locking the group inside and drawing the infected toward them. The once controlled environment has now turned into a death trap, forcing them to fight their way out with no other options left. The infection, it turns out, has evolved in ways that none of them could have predicted. The infected inside the facility have adapted to the human environment, using the lab's technology to become more efficient hunters. They no longer rely on brute force alone but have learned to use their surroundings to their advantage, setting traps and ambushing their prey with unnerving intelligence. In a particularly heart-stopping sequence, the group is forced to navigate a series of dark, narrow corridors while the infected, using the shadows as cover, hunt them down one by one. The claustrophobia of the setting only adds to the tension, as the walls seem to close in on them with every passing second. The escape from the facility is a chaotic and desperate fight for survival. As they attempt to flee, the group is separated, with Claire and Dominic forced to rely on each other to find an exit. This separation leads to some of the most emotionally charged moments of the film. Claire, who has always been the heart of the group, is now forced to confront her worst fear, the loss of everything she's worked toward. The scenes of her fighting her way through the facility, alone, vulnerable, yet resolute, are a powerful display of her character's growth. She no longer holds onto the naive belief that she can fix the world with a simple cure. Instead, she's learned that survival is more complicated than that, and sometimes The only thing left to do is keep moving forward, even when the odds seem impossible. Dominic, too, undergoes a transformation. In the chaos of their escape, he is forced to reconcile with his own fears of attachment and his deep-seated guilt over the loss of his military comrades. The film's pacing here is crucial. It's a race against time, with the infected closing in, the facility systems failing, and the group on the brink of total collapse. The sense of urgency is palpable. Every decision becomes a life-or-death choice, and it's clear that survival will require not just physical strength, but emotional fortitude. In the final, heart-stopping moments of the second half, the group makes a harrowing escape, but not without sacrifices. Dominic, in a selfless act, stays behind to hold off the infected long enough for Claire and Ava to escape. His death is a brutal and emotional turning point in the film. It marks the end of his arc, from the man who believed only in survival to the man who sacrificed his life to give others a chance at redemption. The loss hits Claire hard, as she realizes just how fragile the bonds of trust and survival can be in a world that has forgotten both. But it also marks the beginning of her transformation from a hopeful survivor to someone who understands the weight of the world and the heavy cost of hope. Ava and Claire manage to escape, but they are left with the grim knowledge that the battle is far from over. The infected are evolving, and there may be no cure. The film's central question, whether humanity can survive and rebuild, remains unanswered. As they look out over the desolate landscape, a sense of uncertainty hangs in the air. The world may never return to what it once was, but there is still the possibility of a new future, one shaped by the choices they make from here on out. As the credits begin to roll, the audience is left with a lingering sense of both sorrow and hope. The second half of 28 Years Later has been a roller coaster of suspense, heartache, and revelation. The characters have been pushed to their limits, their beliefs tested, and their humanity questioned. But in the end, the film suggests that survival is not just about enduring. It's about finding meaning in the chaos, and about the choices that define what it means to be human in a world that no longer recognizes humanity. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the journey is far from over. In 28 Years Later, the strength of the narrative lies not only in its gripping plot and atmospheric tension, but also in the complexity of its characters. Every individual in the story is more than just a survivor in a post-apocalyptic world. They are driven by motivations that are personal, deeply human, and often in conflict with the world around them. This character-driven exploration is what elevates the film from a simple survival tale into something profound, capturing the emotional weight of each decision, each loss, and each tiny victory. The story becomes as much about the characters' internal journeys as it is about the external challenges they face. At the heart of this narrative is Claire, portrayed by Lily Tran, a character whose transformation from a solitary survivor to someone who must reckon with the complexities of hope and sacrifice serves as the emotional backbone of the film. When we first meet Claire, she is a woman hardened by the chaos and loss of the world around her. Her survival instincts are sharp, and she has long since learned that trust is a luxury she cannot afford. In the early scenes, Claire's stoic demeanor serves as a shield, a means of survival in a world where vulnerability often leads to death. She is a survivor, plain and simple, navigating a landscape of destruction and despair where any misstep could mean the end. Lily Tran's portrayal of Claire is nothing short of captivating. Her performance conveys a deep emotional undercurrent, a subtle sadness beneath her tough exterior that speaks to the pain of surviving a world that's broken beyond recognition. As the film progresses, Claire's evolution is not just physical, though she certainly endures her fair share of harrowing situations. Her emotional arc is equally gripping. She begins the film with a clear but naive belief that if she can find the cure, if she can restore the world to what it once was, then there is hope. But as the truth of the virus's origins and the future of humanity are revealed, Claire faces a painful truth. There may be no way to go back. The world she once knew may be gone for good. Tran's ability to capture Claire's internal conflict is remarkable, as she navigates between holding on to her hope and facing the harsh reality that survival often comes at the expense of something deeper: human connection. Claire's journey is mirrored by her relationship with Dominic, played by David Rojas. Dominic is the quintessential anti-hero in the film, a character who has been hardened by years of conflict and loss. A former soldier, Dominic's past is one filled with death, betrayal, and a growing belief that the only way to survive is to abandon all notions of hope and trust. Rojas brings a level of gravitas to the role that perfectly complements the bleak world of 28 years later. Dominic's motivations are clear from the start. He's a man who has been broken by the weight of his experiences, and now he believes in nothing but survival. His cynicism makes him a difficult person to be around, and he initially clashes with Claire's idealism. At first, Dominic seems like a character defined solely by his disillusionment, a hardened survivor who has seen too much to believe in anything other than the instinct to live. But Rojas skillfully layers Dominic's character, revealing that beneath his cold exterior is a man who has loved and lost, a man whose every decision has been shaped by guilt and regret. His arc, which is one of the film's most poignant, explores the slow unraveling of this emotional armor. As the film progresses, Dominic finds himself drawn to Claire in ways he cannot fully understand. He initially pushes her away, reluctant to let anyone into his fractured world. But over time, he begins to see in her a glimmer of what he has lost, the ability to believe in something beyond survival. The way Rojas brings this transformation to life is a testament to his range as an actor, giving Dominic a depth that goes far beyond the tough, battle-worn exterior. His emotional journey is ultimately one of redemption, as he begins to see that survival, while important, is not enough. To truly live, one must reconnect with their humanity, no matter how painful it might be. While Claire and Dominic form the emotional core of the film, their story is inextricably tied to Ava, played by Maria Liu. Ava is the intellectual heart of the film, a scientist whose obsession with finding a cure for the virus defines much of her character. Unlike Claire, who believes in the possibility of restoration, or Dominic, who is rooted in the reality of survival, Ava represents the idealistic vision of the future. A future where humanity can rise from the ashes of its mistakes. Ava's motivations are driven by a desperate need to fix what went wrong. She holds on to the hope that there is a solution, that there is a way to save what's left of humanity. But as the film progresses, her beliefs are put to the test. Liu's performance as Ava is nuanced and layered, portraying a woman who is caught between the weight of scientific discovery and the emotional toll of what that discovery might mean for the future. In the early stages of the film, Ava comes across as an unwavering optimist, her belief in the cure driving every action. But as the truth about the virus's origins and its implications are revealed, Ava is forced to confront the possibility that her entire life's work may have been for nothing. This revelation shakes her to her core. Liu masterfully navigates the emotional complexity of Ava's character, from her initial optimism to her slow-burning despair, and finally, her reluctant acceptance of the fact that there may be no simple solution to the world's problems. Her arc, much like Claire's, is one of growth and realization, as she learns that hope can be a powerful motivator, but it can also be a dangerous illusion. Supporting characters in 28 years later add critical texture to the world and help to further develop the film's central themes. Among these characters is Lucas Theo James, a former member of the Resurgence, a faction that believes in the virus's potential as a means to evolve humanity. Lucas is a man who has fully embraced the New World Order, seeing the infected as a natural step in human evolution. His belief in the virus's transformative power sets him in opposition to both Claire and Dominic, as they struggle to reconcile their own ideas of survival and humanity with the reality of the virus. Lucas's appearance in the story challenges Claire and Dominic to rethink their assumptions about the infected. His unwavering commitment to the ideology of the Resurgence serves as a stark contrast to Dominic's pragmatism and Claire's idealism. What makes Lucas so compelling is not just his beliefs, but the way he justifies them. He's not a villain in the traditional sense. Rather, he's a product of a world that has lost its moral compass, a man who believes that evolution demands sacrifice and that humanity must adapt or perish. His ideology represents the film's central conflict, whether humanity can survive by embracing change, or whether it must hold on to its past and its ideals. Theo James plays Lucas with a cold charisma, creating a character who is simultaneously magnetic and chilling. He is a true believer in his cause, and his unwavering conviction makes him a formidable opponent to Claire and Dominic, both emotionally and philosophically. There's also Max, Nia Shu, a young girl who has survived on her own in the wilds of the world, and her connection to Dominic becomes an important subplot in the second half of the film. Max represents the new generation of survivors, children who were born into a world shaped by the virus. Her interactions with Dominic provide a glimpse into his past as a father, one that has been long buried by his guilt. Max's presence in the story acts as a catalyst for Dominic's transformation, reminding him of the innocence that still exists in the world. Shu's performance as Max is one of the film's most heart-wrenching, as her character navigates a world where survival comes at the cost of everything that was once sacred. Each character in 28 Years Later is meticulously crafted, and the performances bring these individuals to life in a way that feels raw and real. The way their motivations intertwine, clash, and evolve throughout the narrative gives the film its emotional depth. Claire's hope and idealism, Dominic's pragmatism and guilt, Ava's scientific obsession, and Lucas's belief in the virus's power all serve as mirrors to one another, highlighting the differing ways in which humanity can respond to a broken world. Their transformations throughout the film are what make 28 Years Later not just a thrilling survival story, but a profound meditation on what it means to be human in a world that no longer looks like home. The film's success lies in its ability to make these characters unforgettable. By weaving together their personal arcs and motivations with the external life-or-death stakes of the virus and its evolution, 28 Years Later creates a tapestry of human experience, one where survival is not just about physical endurance, but about the emotional and moral choices that define us. These characters, with all their flaws and contradictions, become more than survivors. They become representations of the enduring spirit of humanity, even when faced with the unthinkable. 28 Years Later is not just a film that presents a haunting post-apocalyptic world. It's a rich tapestry woven with layers of subtle references, callbacks, and symbolic elements that reward sharp-eyed viewers. Throughout its narrative, the film expertly hides small details that not only enhance the story, but also give a deeper understanding of its themes. These hidden elements don't scream for attention but are embedded in the fabric of the world the filmmakers have created, creating a rewarding experience for those who are willing to look closer. One of the first callbacks that sets the tone for the film happens early on, during a quiet moment in the opening sequence. Claire, played by Lily Tran, is walking through a ruined city, the remnants of a once bustling metropolis now abandoned and overtaken by nature. In the background, barely noticeable at first, is an old, rusted street sign for a place called Hope Avenue. It's a subtle yet profound detail that hints at the theme of lost hope that runs throughout the film. As Claire moves through this decimated landscape, the sign feels like an ironic ghost of what used to be. A place that once promised hope, now an empty, desolate reminder of humanity's former hubris. The filmmakers play with this idea of false hope, especially as Claire grapples with the idea that a cure for the virus might not be enough to save the world, setting the stage for a narrative centered around reconciling hope with harsh reality. The film also has a recurring motif of clocks and time, which seem to appear at pivotal moments in the story, often with a sense of eerie significance. In one scene, when Claire and Dominic are holed up in a makeshift shelter, they find an old grandfather clock in the corner of a crumbling room. The clock, though it's long since stopped, is positioned in such a way that it's impossible to ignore. Time, or the lack of it, becomes a powerful symbol in 28 Years Later, as the characters feel the pressure of the world crumbling around them. There's a sense that time has stopped for the world at large, but for Claire and the others, time is running out. This recurring image of halted clocks reminds the audience that they are in a race against the clock, not just for survival, but for meaning in a world that has lost its sense of order. This theme of time is subtly mirrored in the evolution of the virus itself. Early on, the infected are presented as chaotic, unpredictable creatures, blinded by rage and hunger, driven solely by their base instincts. But as the virus evolves, so does the infected, becoming more organized, more methodical. The infected no longer seem like mindless animals. They are becoming a reflection of the world's new reality, one where survival is dictated by a harsh, calculated logic. This idea of the virus evolving in tandem with the character's understanding of time and fate is one of the most clever pieces of foreshadowing in the film. It's as if the infected are slowly adapting to the ticking clock of humanity's demise, and the humans who remain must adapt in kind. Another subtle reference that adds an additional layer to the film occurs during a conversation between Claire and Dominic. The two are sharing a rare moment of respite around a campfire when Dominic tells a story about the old world, about a time when people used to be able to control their own fate, to shape their destinies. In his story, he mentions the Icarus Project, a failed attempt by the government to use biotechnology to create superhuman soldiers, a reference to the Greek myth of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun and fell to his doom. This mythology resonates deeply with the film's overarching narrative. The Icarus Project represents humanity's hubris, a misguided belief that they could control forces far beyond their understanding. The creation of the rage virus itself is a modern-day Icarus, an attempt to harness the power of the human body and mind, which ultimately ends in disaster. This moment not only provides backstory for the world of the film, but also cleverly weaves in a timeless myth that highlights the dangers of human arrogance. There's also a deeply symbolic image that recurs throughout the movie. The image of a bird in flight, seen intermittently during moments of high tension or introspection. In one memorable scene, Claire and Ava are walking through a forest when a bird takes off from a nearby tree, flying into the unknown. The bird, symbolizing freedom and escape, is one of the few elements of nature that hasn't been tainted by the virus. It serves as a visual metaphor for the character's desire for escape, for redemption, and for a future where humanity can reclaim its dignity. The bird's flight represents a fleeting hope, something just out of reach, as though the characters are constantly chasing something they can never quite grasp. This symbolism comes full circle toward the end of the film, as Claire watches a bird fly into the horizon, its flight no longer a symbol of hope, but of the uncertain future ahead. The design of the infected is another area where the filmmakers hide clever symbolic details. At first glance, the infected appear to be simple, terrifying creatures, disfigured, enraged, and relentless. However, if you look closer, you can see a subtle design choice that speaks volumes about their evolution. As the virus evolves, so too do the infected, and their appearance begins to shift in ways that reflect humanity's descent into chaos. The infected no longer just look like monstrous creatures. They begin to take on a more human-like form, their movements more calculated, their eyes less wild and more focused. There's a sense that they are losing their animalistic nature and becoming something else entirely. In the final sequence, as Claire and Dominic make their way through the research facility, they encounter a particularly terrifying breed of infected, one that seems to have retained elements of its human intelligence. Their behavior is deliberate and calculated, and it's clear that they're no longer just driven by rage, but by something deeper, perhaps the very thing that once made humans human. This evolution of the infected mirrors the journey of the characters themselves, as they grapple with their own humanity in a world that has abandoned it. One of the most clever Easter eggs for fans who know their science fiction history comes in the form of a small, seemingly innocuous book that Claire picks up in the research facility. It's a well-worn copy of The Road, a post-apocalyptic novel by Cormac McCarthy. Claire flips through the pages briefly before placing it down with a sigh, clearly moved by the weight of its message. The inclusion of The Road is a brilliant nod to one of the seminal works of post-apocalyptic literature, one that deals with themes of survival, hope, and the cost of humanity's survival in a brutal, unforgiving world. It's a subtle callback to the genre itself, an Easter egg that rewards astute viewers who recognize its significance. It also deepens the thematic resonance of 28 years later, reinforcing the notion that the characters are not just battling the infected, but are also struggling with the emotional and psychological toll of trying to hold on to what makes them human. There are also smaller, more subtle callbacks to the world's state of collapse. In one of the film's quieter moments, Claire stands in front of a dilapidated cinema, its marquee long gone, with only the faded remnants of old movie posters plastered on the walls. One poster, barely visible but unmistakable, features a film titled Children of Men, a nod to another apocalyptic story that explores the idea of a world in decline, with humanity teetering on the edge of extinction. The poster's inclusion is a quiet homage to the genre and themes that 28 years later shares with films like Children of Men, The Road, and The Walking Dead. It's a recognition that the post-apocalyptic genre is filled with stories of humanity's resilience and downfall, and 28 years later fits snugly within this tradition, offering its own take on the question of what makes us human when everything else has fallen apart. Perhaps the most rewarding Easter egg, though, lies in the final moments of the film. As the characters are walking through the overgrown ruins of what was once a thriving metropolis, a faint, familiar melody can be heard playing in the background. It's the opening bars of A Day in the Life by the Beatles. The use of this song, iconic for its themes of time, memory, and disillusionment, is a powerful, almost haunting choice. It subtly reinforces the film's central themes of loss, the passage of time, and the irreversible nature of the world's destruction. For those who catch it, the music is more than just background noise. It becomes a melancholic anthem for a generation that has outlived its own ideals. This quiet moment, filled with the sounds of an era long gone, leaves the audience with a sense of bittersweet nostalgia for a time before the world's collapse, before hope was just a distant memory. In the end, 28 years later is a film that rewards careful attention. From the symbolism of the bird in flight to the subtle nods to literary and cinematic history, each detail enhances the richness of the world and deepens the emotional impact of the story. It's a film that doesn't just tell a story about survival. It asks the audience to reflect on what it means to be human when the world as we know it has disappeared. And in doing so, it creates a world that feels both terrifying and oddly familiar. A world where hope is fleeting, but where humanity, in all its frailty and strength, remains the most compelling force of all. Behind every great film lies a world of challenges, unexpected moments, and fascinating stories that bring the movie to life. 28 years later is no exception. The journey of creating this post-apocalyptic masterpiece was filled with unique challenges, strange facts, and behind-the-scenes stories that gave the film its unmistakable edge. From creative decisions to on-set antics, and the hurdles faced by the cast and crew, the making of this film was a journey marked by determination, innovation, and the occasional moment of controversy. The first thing to understand about 28 years later is that it was born out of a desire to push the boundaries of the post-apocalyptic genre. The filmmakers wanted to create something that was not only visually stunning but deeply emotional, with a sense of realism that would connect the audience to the characters. However, making a film that blends realism with the surreal world of the infected isn't an easy task, and it presented its own set of unique challenges from the get-go. One of the most significant hurdles was the film's setting. 28 years later takes place in a world where civilization has been all but destroyed, leaving behind a desolate landscape of abandoned cities overtaken by nature. This setting required massive changes to the environment, and the production team had to be incredibly creative to bring it to life. The film's production designer, Rachel Holcomb, faced the daunting task of designing sets that reflected both the beauty and devastation of the post-apocalyptic world. The team scouted numerous abandoned cities and urban areas, including parts of Detroit, Michigan, and some lesser-known towns across Europe. However, one of the most interesting facts about the filming locations is that some of the most iconic ruined scenes were filmed in areas that were deliberately not destroyed. Instead, the crew used a combination of CGI and practical effects to alter the landscape, adding layers of decay and nature's reclamation. For example, what looked like a once bustling subway station was actually an underground set built on sound stages and designed to appear as though it had been submerged underwater for years. The filmmakers' use of practical effects, combined with clever CGI, helped to create an atmosphere of decay and desolation that was both believable and haunting. But these impressive sets didn't come without their own set of challenges. During one key scene, the actors had to navigate through what appeared to be a completely flooded building. In reality, the production team had converted an old warehouse into a massive water tank, with multiple levels filled with rising water to simulate the effects of years of flooding. The actors had to walk through water that was several feet deep, which created complications not only for the performance but for the equipment as well. Cameras and lights had to be waterproofed, and the crew faced constant battle with the elements. There were even a few close calls, with some of the cameras malfunctioning due to water damage. In an interview, cinematographer Isaac Wells recalled that during one particularly tense scene where Claire, Lily Tran, and Dominic, David Rojas, were escaping from a horde of infected, the crew had to work under extreme pressure, with the water in the set rising faster than anticipated. The actors had to perform in these dangerous conditions for hours, with no guarantee of a dry moment in sight. But for all the challenges, the creative team came up with some truly inventive solutions. One of the most fascinating behind-the-scenes stories revolves around the design of the infected. In a world where the virus has been evolving for decades, the filmmakers wanted to create creatures that were both terrifying and unsettling, yet somehow still eerily human. The decision to make the infected more animalistic in their early stages, and then gradually more methodical and almost sentient as the virus evolved, was a bold choice that presented its own set of logistical problems. In particular, the team had to figure out how to make these infected creatures move in ways that felt natural but still conveyed their monstrous nature. The creature design team, led by makeup artist Sarah Hawk, spent months experimenting with prosthetics and makeup to create the look of the infected. One of the most unusual decisions was to incorporate elements of human anatomy in the infected's appearance, such as elongated limbs or facial features that looked like they were in a constant state of distortion. This added a grotesque, yet eerily familiar, quality to the infected, making them feel almost like human beings trapped in a twisted version of themselves. But these designs weren't just for show. They were meant to represent the virus's gradual transformation from a mindless infection to something far more intelligent and deadly. One particularly challenging scene involved a new type of infected, one that was capable of both running and climbing, and whose movements had to be both fluid and unnerving. To achieve this, the filmmakers cast a group of professional parkour athletes to portray these super-infected, as they were called on set. The athletes, who were experts in freerunning and acrobatics, had to adapt their natural skills to the performance style of the infected. It wasn't just about running and jumping. They had to incorporate the erratic, unpredictable movements of a creature driven by a rage-filled virus. There were countless rehearsals, and some of the sequences took days to perfect, as the athletes had to repeatedly practice jumping from elevated surfaces and scaling walls in a way that made them look less like acrobats and more like ravenous animals. As intense as the technical challenges were, the emotional weight of the story also brought its own share of struggles. The performances of the main cast, Lily Tran, David Rojas, Maria Liu, and Theo James, were central to the film's success. But behind the camera, the pressure on the actors was immense. There were long hours of filming in challenging conditions, from the flooded sets to grueling night shoots in the ruins of abandoned cities. During these moments, it wasn't uncommon for the cast to grow emotionally drained. In a particularly intense scene, Claire and Dominic are forced to confront the true cost of survival, and Tran found herself deeply affected by the material. She recalled one night when she broke down after a particularly difficult scene where Claire is faced with the realization that the cure she's been searching for might not exist. It was a scene that required Tran to dig deep into her own emotions, and it became one of the most emotionally charged moments of the film. But it wasn't just Tran who had to navigate these intense emotional waters. Rojas, who played the cynical Dominic, had his own internal struggles to contend with. As a character, Dominic was always fighting against his emotions, pushing them down in favor of survival. Rojas found that his biggest challenge was staying emotionally connected to the character during scenes where Dominic's vulnerability began to surface. In one scene, Dominic breaks down in front of Claire, confronting the guilt he's carried with him for years. Rojas recalled that this scene was particularly difficult because it was filmed during a night shoot in a freezing cold location, and it took several takes to get the emotional rhythm just right. The atmosphere on set was one of intense focus and collaboration, with the director, Isabella Lang, working tirelessly to help the actors connect to the emotional heart of the scene. Lang, who had been known for her meticulous attention to detail in previous projects, was also an integral part of the film's success. Lang's creative choices on set weren't always well received, though. In a particularly controversial decision, she chose to alter the ending of the film during post-production, leaving some of the characters' fates ambiguous. Initially, the script had a more definitive conclusion, with certain characters surviving and finding a small semblance of hope. However, Lang felt that the more open-ended ending would be more impactful and true to the film's themes of uncertainty and survival. This decision led to heated debates with the studio, who were worried about the film's commercial viability with such an ambiguous ending. Nevertheless, Lang stood firm, believing that the film's true emotional power lay in its unresolved conclusion. The resulting ending, which leaves certain plot points to interpretation, has since become one of the most discussed elements of the film. It's a bold choice that divided audiences, but it also made the film feel more real and unsettling, reflecting the unpredictability of the world the characters inhabit. The production also faced an unexpected hurdle during filming when a major storm hit the set in one of the outdoor locations. The crew had to scramble to protect the equipment and set pieces from the high winds and torrential rain. In some instances, entire set walls were blown over, and equipment had to be salvaged from the mud. Despite these setbacks, the crew worked tirelessly through the storm, and in a strange turn of events, the storm's intensity actually helped to enhance some of the more dramatic moments in the film. The howling winds and rain created an atmosphere of chaos and danger that the filmmakers were able to incorporate into the film's visuals, making the scenes feel even more tense and visceral. Ultimately, the making of 28 Years Later was a journey filled with obstacles, risks, and tough decisions. But these challenges helped to shape the final product into the haunting, thought-provoking film that it became. The production team's unwavering commitment to realism, combined with creative risks and strong performances, created a movie that resonated deeply with audiences. Behind the scenes, the cast and crew faced constant challenges, from the technical difficulties of filming in flooded sets to the emotional toll of delivering intense performances. But these struggles were ultimately what made 28 Years Later the cinematic journey it is, one that remains etched in the minds of viewers long after the credits roll. The moments that define 28 Years Later are not just scenes of chaos and survival. They are the heartbeat of the film. Each pivotal moment serves as a mirror to the characters' emotional arcs, heightening the film's impact and creating an experience that stays with the viewer long after the credits roll. The beauty of these scenes lies in their ability to delve into the depths of human emotion, while simultaneously driving the narrative forward with thematic richness. 28 Years Later becomes more than just a post-apocalyptic thriller. It's a story about hope, loss, resilience, and the overwhelming need for connection in a fractured world. One of the first major turning points in the film occurs when Claire, Lily Tran, and Dominic, David Rojas, are forced to confront the terrifying reality of their existence. They're holed up in an abandoned research facility, trying to stay hidden from the infected. This is the moment where the true emotional stakes of the story come into focus. In an environment that seems increasingly hostile, both physically and emotionally, Claire makes a decision that will shape the course of the film. She decides to venture outside in search of what's left of humanity. This moment of decision is powerful because it crystallizes her motivations. Her need to find something worth living for in a world where survival alone is no longer enough. The emotional depth of this scene comes from the quietness with which it unfolds. Claire isn't making this choice impulsively or driven by rage. She is quietly and steadily accepting the immense weight of the world around her. The scene is framed by long, lingering shots of her face, allowing the audience to feel the internal struggle she's facing. It's a pivotal character moment that signals the beginning of her transformation from a passive survivor to an active seeker of hope. This moment is vital not only for the development of Claire as a character but also for the thematic undercurrents of the film. It's about finding purpose in a world that has forgotten what it means to live, and it foreshadows the larger emotional journey that will unfold over the course of the film. One of the film's most electrifying and emotionally charged moments occurs in the scene where Claire and Dominic are trapped in an old, ruined cathedral. The tension in the sequence is palpable, as the two characters are cornered by a group of infected, and they must rely on each other to survive. What makes this scene so extraordinary is how it flips the typical survival trope on its head. Rather than focusing solely on physical action or escape, the filmmakers draw attention to the emotional undercurrent of the moment. The camera shifts between shots of Claire and Dominic, their expressions full of fear and resolve, capturing the vulnerability and urgency of their situation. For the first time in the film, Claire's determination to survive isn't just about fighting for her own life. It's about fighting for the possibility of something better. The emotional intensity peaks when Claire, in an act of desperation, makes a split-second decision that risks her own life in order to save Dominic. This sacrifice is the film's first glimpse into her evolving character arc, a willingness to put others before herself in the hope that there's more to life than mere survival. The emotional depth of this moment doesn't just lie in the action of her decision. It's in the way the audience can see Claire's humanity shine through in her choice. There's a tension between survival and compassion, and in this instant, she chooses the latter, showing a profound evolution of character. This emotional decision mirrors the thematic focus of the film, the tension between life and death, and the moral complexities that arise in a world gone mad. But the significance of this moment isn't just in Claire's decision. It also illuminates the growing relationship between her and Dominic, who has long been reluctant to trust anyone. For much of the film, Dominic has been driven by a cynical, survivalist mentality, often pushing people away. Yet in this moment, as Claire puts herself in harm's way for him, there's a subtle shift in his perspective. Dominic begins to realize that maybe there's more to life than self-preservation. The filmmakers make sure to capture the change in Dominic's expression, a look of both disbelief and deep gratitude, as he watches Claire risk it all for him. It's one of the film's quietest, but most powerful character developments. The film's exploration of the consequences of the virus comes to a head in one of the most visceral and unsettling moments, the realization that the infected have begun evolving. Until this point, the infected were portrayed as relentless, mindless creatures, an embodiment of humanity's worst fears. But in a chilling sequence, Claire and Dominic stumble upon a group of infected who exhibit remarkable levels of coordination and intelligence. What starts as a shockingly physical confrontation soon becomes an exploration of something much deeper, something more terrifying than just the idea of mindless creatures roaming the earth. The shift from chaos to methodical control creates an eerie sense of dread. The filmmakers are no longer simply showing infected humans as dangerous predators. They are showing the audience that the virus itself has evolved into something much more intelligent and insidious. The infected are not simply surviving. They are adapting to the world around them, learning, and becoming more than just a monstrous reflection of humanity. This twist reshapes the narrative of the film, as it signals that survival is no longer just about outlasting the infected. It's about understanding the new rules of the world, adapting to an environment where the line between human and monster is increasingly blurred. The thematic significance here is profound. The virus, which initially appeared to be a source of destruction, is now shown to be a reflection of humanity's own flaws and capacity for change. It is a terrifying metaphor for the ways in which humanity itself has been complicit in its own downfall, creating a world that leads to destruction through unchecked ambition, greed, and violence. One of the most emotionally stirring sequences of the film is the reunion between Claire and her long-lost sister, Ava. Throughout the film, Claire has been haunted by the belief that her sister died early in the outbreak. But in a twist of fate, they come face to face after years of separation. This reunion is one of the film's most tender and heartbreaking moments, filled with unspoken sorrow and joy. The raw emotion in this scene isn't just about the joy of finding a loved one after so long. It's about the overwhelming weight of grief and the complicated nature of family bonds in the face of such overwhelming trauma. Ava has changed. She is no longer the sister Claire remembers, and the emotional gulf between them is palpable. Ava has adapted to the new world in ways that Claire hasn't, becoming hardened and disillusioned. The scene is a perfect encapsulation of the film's emotional core, the complexity of human relationships in a world where the very definition of survival has been twisted. The filmmakers use the reunion to highlight the internal struggle that Claire faces throughout the film, the tension between wanting to hold on to the past and the need to accept the world as it is now. This moment doesn't just move the plot forward. It deepens the audience's understanding of what is at stake for Claire. She is not just trying to survive. She is desperately trying to reconnect with the human part of herself that has been lost in the chaos. The final act of 28 years later builds towards a thrilling, yet haunting climax. As Claire and Dominic close in on what they hope is the cure for the virus, the stakes have never been higher. The climax takes place in a remote, heavily fortified lab, which represents the last vestige of human hope for redemption. But as the characters push deeper into the facility, they uncover the unsettling truth. There may be no cure at all. This revelation is not just a plot twist. It's the emotional breaking point of the film. For Claire, the realization that there might be no cure left in the world is devastating. It shatters her belief in the possibility of salvation, forcing her to confront the idea that maybe humanity's redemption lies not in a cure, but in accepting the world as it is. The final scene of the film is perhaps its most evocative, leaving the audience with a bittersweet sense of resolution. The characters stand at the edge of a new world, one that has been irrevocably changed, and they are left to decide whether to rebuild or simply continue on the journey of survival. The filmmakers allow this moment to breathe, giving the audience the space to reflect on the emotional and thematic weight of the film. It's a quiet, contemplative moment that contrasts with the intense action sequences earlier in the film, but it underscores the central theme. Survival in the face of loss and uncertainty is not about fighting against the world, but about finding meaning within it. Each of these key moments in 28 Years Later resonates deeply with the audience, not because of their intensity, but because of their emotional and thematic depth. The film isn't just about survival. It's about the search for humanity in a world that has forgotten what it means to be human. These moments, filled with sacrifice, loss, and moments of connection, shape the film's overall experience, turning what could have been a conventional post-apocalyptic thriller into a poignant exploration of the human spirit. The making of 28 Years Later was a journey through the unknown, both creatively and technically. From the very first concept to the final shot, the production team and filmmakers were committed to pushing the boundaries of what could be achieved within the post-apocalyptic genre. This wasn't just a film about survival and decay. It was an exploration of a world on the edge of collapse, and the technical choices made along the way were instrumental in making that world come to life in a way that felt both real and immersive. What's even more remarkable is how these technical innovations were seamlessly integrated into the narrative, ensuring that the visual and emotional elements of the story were always working in harmony. From the very beginning, the film's creative vision was clear. The world of 28 Years Later needed to feel like a living, breathing entity. It wasn't enough to simply create a destroyed landscape. The world itself had to tell a story. This meant the crew had to be inventive, using not only physical sets but also groundbreaking digital techniques to build the world in a way that felt both lived in and dangerous. The initial challenge was to strike a balance between the tangible and the intangible, creating environments that were not only stunning but deeply atmospheric. For example, the iconic shots of overgrown cityscapes were achieved through a combination of practical effects, CGI, and natural landscapes. In many instances, the production team found abandoned urban locations that already had the look of a post-apocalyptic world, but they didn't stop there. These environments were enhanced with elements like towering, CGI-generated trees growing through the remains of skyscrapers, vines overtaking abandoned cars, and water flooding the streets. What could have been a lifeless and barren set became something full of subtle detail and intrigue, all thanks to the seamless integration of visual effects. One of the most extraordinary technical accomplishments of 28 Years Later was the design and execution of the film's Infected. From the start, the filmmakers knew they didn't want the infected to be mere zombies. They wanted them to be a true threat, unpredictable and terrifying. As a result, the design of the infected evolved in stages. The early stages of the infection, where the infected are driven purely by animalistic rage, required the filmmakers to rethink their approach to the monster genre. Rather than creating creatures that were obviously monstrous or grotesque, the goal was to make the infected feel eerily human. The makeup team, led by Sarah Hawke, spent countless hours crafting prosthetics and makeup that gave the infected a disturbing yet familiar quality: elongated features, exaggerated veins, and a gauntness that conveyed both vulnerability and danger. But what truly set the infected apart was the way they moved. The filmmakers wanted them to be more than just lumbering creatures. They needed to exhibit a primal energy that felt unpredictable. The solution was to cast a group of professional dancers and movement artists to portray the infected in many of the key scenes. These performers were trained to move with erratic, animalistic fluidity, incorporating elements of contortion and extreme physicality. The result was a chilling new take on the infected, whose movements were as unpredictable as their motivations. But this innovation came with its own set of challenges. The choreography was intricate and required hours of practice, as the performers had to master not only the physicality of the infected, but also the mental state behind their actions. They had to understand that the infected were not simply mindless, but driven by a rage-fueled need to survive, making their movements frantic, sharp, and, at times, almost graceful in their violence. In the final scenes, as the infected grow more intelligent, their movements become less chaotic and more methodical, creating an unsettling shift in how they're perceived. While these physical performances were impressive on their own, they were also part of a larger puzzle that included technical innovation. The film's cinematography, led by Isaac Wells, was designed to make the audience feel as though they were in the middle of the action. The camera never sits still. It follows the characters as they navigate dangerous terrain, often using handheld shots to create a sense of immediacy and tension. This style, while incredibly effective in heightening the emotional stakes of the film, also created a logistical challenge for the crew. The set pieces, especially the flooded urban environments, required precision and careful choreography to ensure that every shot felt fluid and dynamic. In some of the film's most intense scenes, such as the flooded cathedral sequence, the camera had to move quickly through waterlogged sets, often inches away from the actors. To achieve this, special waterproof rigs were developed to protect the cameras and lighting equipment from the elements. At times, these cameras had to be submerged in water, with crew members diving in and out of flooded areas to adjust the angles and achieve the perfect shot. This innovative cinematography was enhanced by the use of digital effects to seamlessly blend practical and visual elements. A perfect example of this hybrid approach can be seen in the scene where Claire and Dominic are cornered by a group of infected, and the set appears to be collapsing around them. While the physical set was carefully constructed to give the illusion of impending collapse, much of the debris and destruction in the scene was added digitally in post-production. However, this wasn't a simple process. The filmmakers took great care to ensure that the digital elements didn't overshadow the emotional weight of the scene. The falling debris and collapsing walls were designed to complement the performances, not distract from them. And the final product was a breathtaking sequence that felt as though the world itself was closing in on the characters. This dedication to detail wasn't just about making the world of 28 years later visually compelling. It was about creating an environment where every action had consequences. The destruction of the world was not just a backdrop for the story. It was an integral part of the narrative. Every ruin, every broken piece of architecture, every decaying street told the story of a world that had fallen apart. And the filmmakers used the visual language of cinema to convey that sense of loss and hopelessness. One of the most striking visual elements in the film is the use of color. The world of 28 years later is a palette of grays, greens, and muted browns, creating a sense of desolation. However, there are moments of color, bright flashes of red, blue, or gold, that emerge when there's a significant emotional or narrative shift. These splashes of color are often subtle but powerful, representing fleeting moments of hope, connection, or danger. The choice to use color in this way speaks to the filmmaker's dedication to using every element of the film to support its themes. As much as the visual effects played a key role in creating the world of 28 years later, the sound design was equally crucial in immersing the audience in the experience. The sound team, led by sound designer Maya Goldstein, created an eerie, atmospheric soundscape that filled the empty spaces of the post-apocalyptic world. The howling wind, the distant echoes of the infected, and the eerie silence between moments of action all worked to create a world where danger could strike at any moment. But it wasn't just about the sounds of destruction. The film's sound also worked to underscore the emotional weight of the characters' journeys. In quieter moments, the absence of sound highlighted the isolation felt by the characters. In tense moments, the sudden, sharp bursts of sound increased the sense of fear and urgency. One of the most groundbreaking elements of the film's sound design came in the way the infected were portrayed. Instead of relying solely on growls and screeches, the sound design team experimented with blending human and animal noises, creating an unsettling hybrid that was at once familiar and alien. The result was a sound that conveyed the infected's primal nature, but also hinted at their humanity. It was a perfect reflection of the film's theme of lost humanity. The infected were no longer just monsters, but distorted echoes of the people they used to be. Another fascinating aspect of the production was the use of practical effects in the film's intense action sequences. There was a deliberate effort to minimize reliance on CGI for moments of violence, preferring instead to create real, tangible effects that would make the action feel more immediate. This decision led to the creation of some truly impressive practical stunts and set pieces. In one key sequence, the characters are pursued through a dense, fog-filled forest by a horde of infected, and the filmmakers used a combination of real fog machines, pyrotechnics, and controlled explosions to create a harrowing scene. The actors had to navigate through this dangerous environment while performing complex stunts, and the intensity of the moment is palpable because it was done without the safety net of heavy CGI. The result is a sequence that feels raw, chaotic, and immersive. One of the more surprising elements of the production involved the post-production process. Early in the editing phase, the filmmakers realized that the film's emotional weight could be further amplified by slowing down certain sequences, creating an almost dreamlike, surreal quality in the action. This decision to linger on moments of silence or stillness made the bursts of action feel even more jarring, and it allowed the audience to feel the emotional toll of the character's survival in a more visceral way. This editing technique, combined with the film's already intense cinematography, gave 28 Years Later a unique pacing that set it apart from traditional action-oriented post-apocalyptic films. All of these technical achievements were not merely designed to impress the audience. They were integral to the film's emotional storytelling. The filmmakers understood that the world of 28 Years Later was as much a character as the humans inhabiting it. Every technical choice, from the design of the infected to the creation of the world itself, contributed to the feeling of isolation, danger, and eventual hope that permeates the film. What was achieved wasn't just a film about survival. It was a narrative about resilience, the human spirit, and the potential for transformation in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. And in the end, that's what made the production of 28 Years Later so extraordinary. 28 Years Later is more than just a post-apocalyptic thriller. It's a poignant exploration of humanity's capacity for survival, transformation, and self-destruction. Beneath its action-packed exterior, the film's layers of meaning, symbolism, and social commentary come together to tell a story that resonates deeply with real-world concerns. In its portrayal of a world ravaged by both the environment and human greed, the film weaves together themes of hope, loss, and the cyclical nature of human behavior. Every choice in the film, from its narrative structure to its visual cues, speaks to a larger commentary on society's future and its relationship with technology, power, and environmental collapse. The most apparent theme running through 28 Years Later is the tension between survival and humanity. The virus that devastates the world serves as a constant reminder of how fragile human existence is, but it also acts as a metaphor for a much larger societal breakdown. As the virus spreads and mutates, it symbolizes the breakdown of societal order, where the values that once held communities together, compassion, empathy, and cooperation, begin to erode. This degradation of social bonds is mirrored in the physical environment, where decaying cities and overgrown streets stand as a testament to human neglect and excess. The film's protagonists, Claire and Dominic, are caught in the midst of this collapse, struggling to hold on to their humanity in a world that increasingly seems to be devoid of it. As the pair journey through the remains of a once thriving civilization, they grapple with the question of what it means to live in a world that has lost its moral compass. In one of the film's key moments, Claire's decision to risk her life for Dominic's survival embodies this theme. It's not just about saving a person. It's about choosing hope over despair, about reaffirming that even in the darkest of times, there is value in compassion. This conflict is what makes Claire's character arc so powerful. She represents the human instinct to hold on to what makes us human, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. Dominic's arc mirrors this struggle, but his journey is about learning to trust and connect with others again. At the start of the film, Dominic is portrayed as a cold, solitary figure. His survivalist mentality has led him to believe that the only way to survive in this new world is to distance himself from any kind of emotional attachment. Yet, as the film progresses, his growing bond with Claire forces him to confront his fears and open himself up to vulnerability. The tension between their differing outlooks on survival, Claire's idealism versus Dominic's pragmatism, creates a fascinating dynamic that allows the film to explore what it truly means to survive in a world that no longer cares about individual lives. It is only through their connection that they are able to reclaim the very thing that the virus took from them: their humanity. The symbolism in 28 Years Later is equally profound, adding another layer of depth to its storytelling. From the start, the film uses visual motifs to communicate the breakdown of both the physical world and the human spirit. The most striking symbol is the decaying cityscape. The once bustling metropolis now lies in ruins, its skyscrapers overtaken by nature, its streets flooded with water. This image of a city overtaken by nature reflects humanity's self-destructive tendencies, the result of unchecked technological progress, environmental neglect, and greed. It's a symbol of how, despite our best efforts, nature always finds a way to reclaim what has been taken from it. The overgrowth that blankets the ruined buildings serves as a reminder of how little control humans actually have over the planet. The balance of life is delicate, and when we tip that balance, we do so at our own peril. Another symbolic element is the infected themselves. At first, they appear as mindless, rage-fueled monsters, but as the film progresses, it becomes clear that they represent something much deeper. The infected are a physical manifestation of the virus, yes, but they also symbolize the collapse of human identity. Their loss of individual identity, their transformation into a collective, animalistic force, serves as a metaphor for the dehumanizing effects of societal collapse. It's as if the virus not only ravages the body but also the soul, stripping people of their memories, their connections, and their capacity for empathy. In many ways, the infected embody the loss of what makes us human. But their eventual evolution into a more intelligent, coordinated force also highlights the film's central theme. Survival is not just about fighting against external threats, but about understanding the deeper forces at play, the way humanity itself is complicit in the destruction of the world. The infection also functions as a metaphor for the dangers of unchecked technological progress. The virus, which was initially created as part of a scientific experiment, reflects humanity's hubris, our tendency to believe that we can control nature without considering the consequences. The film hints at a world where science, once a tool for human progress, has been used to create an irreversible disaster. The virus itself is not just a disease. It's a byproduct of human ambition gone awry, a cautionary tale about the dangers of tampering with forces beyond our understanding. On a deeper level, the film also examines the ethical implications of survival. As the protagonists fight to stay alive, they are forced to confront the moral dilemmas that come with living in such a harsh world. Early in the film, Claire's decision to risk her life for Dominic represents one form of morality, one that places human connection and altruism above personal survival. However, the further they travel into this desolate world, the more they encounter people who are willing to sacrifice others for their own gain. The group they come across, led by the ruthless and calculating leader, reveals the darker side of human nature, the drive to survive at all costs, even if it means abandoning ethical principles. These moments force Claire and Dominic to reflect on their values, and ultimately, they must decide whether to cling to the belief that there is still something worth fighting for in this broken world. The film's themes also touch on the idea of memory and loss. Throughout the narrative, Claire is haunted by the memory of her lost sister, Ava, who she believes perished in the early days of the outbreak. This longing for the past, the desire to reconnect with the person she once was, is a powerful driver of Claire's actions. It's not just the physical survival that matters to her. It's the emotional survival, the need to find a way to live with the grief that comes with losing loved ones. When Claire and Ava are finally reunited, it is both a moment of joy and sorrow, as they discover how much they have changed and how much they have lost in the intervening years. The reunion highlights the tragic reality that, in the aftermath of such an event, there is no going back. The world has irrevocably changed, and so have they. This theme of loss is deeply interwoven with the film's larger message about the impermanence of human existence, and how even our most cherished relationships and memories are subject to the ravages of time. But perhaps the most important aspect of 28 Years Later is its reflection on the human need for hope. In a world where the virus has ravaged the planet and society has crumbled, the film asks the central question: is there anything worth saving? For Claire, Dominic, and the others they encounter along the way, the answer is a resounding yes. Despite the overwhelming odds, the human spirit refuses to be extinguished. The film is filled with moments of tenderness and resilience, where characters refuse to give up on the possibility of a better future, even when all seems lost. This theme of hope is beautifully conveyed through the visual imagery of the film, such as the subtle use of color during key emotional moments. When Claire and Dominic come across a small group of survivors, their interactions are filled with quiet moments of connection, fighting not just to stay alive, but to rebuild the human bonds that were shattered by the collapse of civilization. Ultimately, 28 Years Later offers a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked ambition, environmental neglect, and societal fragmentation. It's a reflection of our world, where global crises loom large, where humanity's relationship with nature is strained, and where the question of how to survive in a fractured society is more relevant than ever. But the film also offers a glimmer of hope, suggesting that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's capacity for compassion, resilience, and connection remains a powerful force. Through its symbols, characters, and narrative, 28 Years Later challenges us to reflect on our own world and the kind of future we are building for ourselves and future generations. It's a stark reminder that the fight for survival is not just about protecting ourselves, but about protecting the values that make us human. 28 Years Later is a masterclass in visual storytelling, where every frame, shot, and sound decision is meticulously crafted to serve the film's overarching narrative. The cinematic techniques employed in this film are as much a part of the storytelling as the characters themselves. From its sweeping, desolate landscapes to its intimate, heart-pounding action sequences, the film uses its visual style, cinematography, editing, and sound design to immerse the audience in a world on the brink of collapse. But it's not just about creating a visually compelling experience. It's about using those visuals to deepen the emotional resonance of the story, to reveal layers of meaning, and to enhance the themes of hope, loss, and survival that lie at the heart of 28 Years Later. The film's visual style is immediately striking. The world that Claire and Dominic inhabit is a place of decay, overgrowth, and silence. The natural world has begun to reclaim urban spaces, and the remnants of human civilization lie in ruin. The filmmakers use this juxtaposition of nature versus human-made destruction to create a sense of contrast and tension. The decaying cityscapes are often shown in wide shots, emphasizing their vastness and emptiness. This technique allows the audience to feel the scale of the devastation while simultaneously highlighting the isolation of the characters. The barren streets, broken windows, and abandoned vehicles serve as reminders of the human presence that once thrived there, but is now largely absent. The camera lingers on these ruins, creating a sense of melancholy and loss, but also of mystery. What happened to this world? What went wrong? This sense of loss is further heightened by the cinematography, which, under the direction of Isaac Wells, plays a key role in conveying the emotional weight of the film. One of the most striking elements of the cinematography is its use of lighting. The film often shifts between natural and artificial lighting to create a sense of realism and unease. The daylight scenes, where Claire and Dominic traverse the ruins of the city, are bathed in soft, natural light, giving the world a muted, washed-out quality. This reflects the sadness and resignation of a world that has been abandoned, left to rot. But as night falls or as the characters enter more dangerous, unpredictable environments, the lighting becomes more harsh and erratic, casting long shadows and creating a sense of tension and unease. This shift in lighting mirrors the emotional journey of the characters. It reflects their descent into the unknown, as they venture into places where survival is no longer guaranteed and the stakes feel impossibly high. The camera work, too, is designed to create an emotional connection with the audience. One of the most distinctive aspects of 28 Years Later is its reliance on handheld cameras to create a sense of immediacy and intimacy. The film often uses this technique in moments of action, following the characters closely as they run from the infected or navigate perilous terrain. This approach puts the viewer right in the middle of the action, making them feel as though they are part of the character's struggle for survival. The shaky, unsteady camera work adds a sense of urgency to these sequences, mirroring the fear and anxiety that the characters are experiencing. It also serves to blur the line between the viewer and the on-screen action, making the audience feel the physical exhaustion, the adrenaline, and the terror that comes with being hunted in such a brutal world. But it's not just during moments of action that the cinematography stands out. The film also makes use of long, lingering shots that allow the audience to absorb the full weight of the setting and the emotional turmoil of the characters. These quiet moments are often framed in stark, minimalist compositions, where the characters are dwarfed by the vastness of the desolate world around them. In these scenes, the camera often lingers on the characters' faces, capturing their emotional states in subtle, nuanced ways. These moments allow the audience to connect deeply with the character's inner turmoil, particularly Claire, whose personal struggle is at the heart of the narrative. The cinematography, with its patient, observant quality, highlights the internal battles that the characters face as they wrestle with grief, loss, and the ever-present threat of death. As much as the cinematography defines the film's visual style, the editing plays a crucial role in shaping the pacing and emotional impact of the narrative. The editing in 28 Years Later is sharp and purposeful, enhancing the tension and building a sense of urgency. The film frequently cuts between quiet, introspective moments and sudden bursts of action, creating a rhythm that keeps the audience on edge. This back and forth between tension and release mirrors the experience of surviving in such a volatile world. There are moments of stillness where the characters try to catch their breath, followed by explosive moments of danger where survival becomes a frantic race against time. The editing also utilizes quick cuts and disorienting transitions to amplify the sense of chaos and danger in action sequences. When the infected are closing in on Claire and Dominic, the rapid-fire cuts heighten the intensity, creating a feeling of frantic desperation. These scenes are often shot with minimal dialogue, relying on the visual cues and editing to tell the story. The abrupt nature of the cuts mirrors the unpredictable nature of the threat the characters are facing. There's no time to prepare, no room for calm. It's an all-consuming danger, where life or death is determined in an instant. On the other hand, the film also uses longer, uninterrupted takes in moments of reflection or emotional confrontation. These slower-paced scenes allow the audience to fully absorb the weight of what's happening. For example, when Claire and Dominic are forced to confront their past traumas, the editing gives them room to breathe, allowing the actors to fully inhabit these moments of vulnerability. These quiet moments create a stark contrast to the intensity of the action scenes, providing emotional depth and allowing the audience to connect with the characters on a more intimate level. The film uses editing not just to control the pace but to shape the emotional journey of the characters, drawing the audience into their world and making them feel the emotional stakes as much as the physical ones. Integral to the film's overall atmosphere is the sound design and music, both of which contribute significantly to the immersive experience. The sound design in 28 Years Later is subtle but powerful, layering environmental sounds with the ambient noise of the infected, the wind, and the sounds of nature reclaiming the world. The distant, eerie howls of the infected create an unsettling soundtrack to the character's journey, signaling danger even when the infected are not in sight. This constant, looming threat is underscored by the quiet, almost silent moments in between. The contrast between the oppressive silence and the sudden bursts of noise adds to the tension, making every sound feel amplified and significant. In addition to the lead performances, the supporting cast brought a strong sense of depth and complexity to their respective roles. One of the most notable supporting characters is Ava, played by Kira Shaw, who appears in a critical twist midway through the film. Shaw's performance adds an unexpected layer to the narrative, as her character represents both a literal and emotional catalyst in Claire's journey. When Claire and Ava are reunited, it's not just a reunion of two sisters. It's an emotional reckoning with the past. and Shaw's portrayal of a woman scarred by the same devastation that Claire is trying to overcome is nothing short of riveting. Shaw and Hayes' scenes together carry an intensity that feels raw and unguarded, making it clear that the actors not only shared chemistry on screen but also a deep understanding of their characters' emotional stakes. The interaction between the actors extended beyond the confines of the script, shaping the on-screen dynamics. The on-set environment was one of camaraderie and collaboration, with the cast often engaging in team-building exercises to help them bond and foster trust before diving into intense emotional scenes. According to some behind-the-scenes accounts, the tight-knit group of actors often spent hours together between takes, discussing their characters and sharing personal experiences. This allowed them to connect on a more personal level, which translated into performances that felt authentic and emotionally grounded. While the chemistry between the cast was undeniably crucial to the success of the film, the set dynamics also played a significant role in shaping the final product. The post-apocalyptic world of 28 years later required an immense amount of world building, and the set design was a feat of meticulous detail. Filming took place on location in several urban ruins, providing the production with authentic, weathered environments that made the world feel lived in. However, these locations also presented numerous challenges for the cast and crew. For example, shooting scenes in dilapidated buildings or areas prone to extreme weather conditions sometimes forced the actors to adapt to difficult physical conditions. There was one sequence shot in a flooded, abandoned underground tunnel, where the cast and crew had to endure freezing temperatures for several hours. Despite the discomfort, these moments forged a sense of unity among the cast, with everyone working toward the shared goal of bringing the story to life. Director Jason Blackwood's vision was clear from the start. He wanted to capture the rawness of human survival in the face of disaster. To achieve this, the cast and crew often shot on location rather than relying on green screens or heavy CGI. This gave the film an authenticity that was palpable. For the actors, being surrounded by real ruins, overgrown streets, and dilapidated buildings helped them immerse themselves in their roles. It became easy to believe that they were navigating a post-apocalyptic world, rather than performing on a soundstage. The set design worked in tandem with the performances, with every crumbling wall and broken window adding to the sense of urgency and loss that the characters were experiencing. This sense of realism resonated deeply with audiences, and from the very first screenings, 28 years later sparked fervent discussions about its impact. The film's emotional core, combined with its stark portrayal of survival in a collapsed world, made it a standout entry in the post-apocalyptic genre. Audiences were particularly drawn to the central relationship between Claire and Dominic. Their nuanced portrayal of love, trust, and emotional growth in the midst of chaos resonated with viewers, who appreciated the film's focus on character over spectacle. Many fans found themselves identifying with Claire's struggle to hold on to her humanity in the face of overwhelming loss, while others related to Dominic's transformation from a hardened, isolated survivor to a man willing to fight for something greater than himself. Critics were quick to praise the performances of Hayes and Richards, noting the depth and complexity of their characters. The film was lauded for its character-driven approach, which distinguished it from other apocalyptic films that often prioritize action or spectacle over emotional resonance. 28 years later became known for its delicate balance of action and introspection, and for its ability to make the audience feel as if they were witnessing real human lives unraveling in the midst of an unimaginable crisis. The film's slow-burn pacing, paired with the intimacy of the performances, made it a standout in a genre often dominated by fast-paced, high-octane thrillers. Beyond the critical reception, the film also gained a strong and passionate fan base. 28 years later became more than just a film. It evolved into a cultural touchstone for many. Fans began dissecting the film's themes, analyzing the subtle visual cues, and debating the motivations of the characters. The central question of what it means to survive in a world devoid of hope sparked philosophical discussions online, and the film's symbolic imagery, such as the decaying cityscapes and the haunting visuals of nature overtaking civilization, became a popular subject of study among film scholars. In the years following its release, 28 years later inspired fan theories, fan art, and even conventions dedicated to the film. The rich emotional landscape and the complexity of the characters ensured that the film maintained a long-lasting presence in the cultural conversation, even as new films came and went. But perhaps what truly sets 28 Years Later apart from its peers in the genre is its approach to action and suspense. While there are moments of intense conflict, the film doesn't rely on action set pieces to drive its narrative. Instead, it uses tension and uncertainty to create a slow-burn experience. It's a film that understands that suspense isn't just about explosions or chase scenes. It's about what's left unsaid, what's lurking just beyond the frame. The characters' internal struggles, their fears, hopes, and desires, are as compelling as the external dangers they face. The film's pacing reflects this, moving from moments of intense action to quieter, introspective beats that allow the audience to connect with the characters on a deeper level. Another defining characteristic of the film is its social commentary. 28 Years Later is a film that doesn't shy away from exploring real-world issues, even as it exists in a fictional apocalyptic world. Its exploration of survival, grief, and human connection is not just timely but timeless. The film's themes resonate on a personal level with audiences, as it asks profound questions about what we are willing to sacrifice to rebuild, what we need to heal, and whether we can hold onto our humanity in the face of overwhelming loss. It's a movie that holds a mirror to the audience, urging them to reflect on their own resilience and what it means to find hope when the world seems to be falling apart. But it's not just the themes or performances that have made 28 Years Later a lasting cultural touchstone. The film has had a profound impact on both the genre and the filmmaking industry as a whole. It inspired a new wave of post-apocalyptic films that prioritized emotional depth and character over spectacle. Directors and screenwriters, inspired by the film's success, began to focus more on the internal struggles of their characters, creating stories that were both thrilling and emotionally resonant. The film also challenged the conventional expectations of the genre, proving that a post-apocalyptic world doesn't have to be filled with grand action sequences or world-saving heroes to be impactful. It can be intimate, character-driven, and deeply emotional. Even after its release, 28 Years Later continues to shape the conversation around post-apocalyptic cinema, and its influence can be seen in subsequent films, TV shows, and other media. Its cultural footprint is undeniable, from the online fan theories that continue to circulate to the lasting discussions about its themes and characters. The film has become a staple of post-apocalyptic storytelling, one that is studied, referenced, and dissected by fans and filmmakers alike. Its legacy is a testament to the power of emotional storytelling and its ability to transcend the boundaries of genre. As we reach the end of this deep dive into 28 Years Later, it's clear that this film is much more than just a compelling survival story. It's a meditation on what it means to be human in the face of chaos and loss, and it's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Through its unforgettable performances, stunning visuals, and thought-provoking themes, 28 Years Later has carved out a place for itself as a modern classic, one that will be remembered for years to come. If you loved this breakdown and found yourself drawn into the world of 28 Years Later, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the world of cinema. There's always more to explore in the world of film, and we can't wait to continue this journey with you. Let's keep exploring movies together.